Welcome to the Printer's Edge with LaManna, a podcast about how to sell, buy, or build a printing business. Now here are your hosts, LaManna and Ken Okel.
You're listening to the Printer's Edge podcast with LaManna, presented by Label and Narrow Web. I'm Ken Okel, and I am joined by LaManna, who is the premier business broker and business advisor for the printing and print-related industries, and he's no stranger to the readers of Label and Narrow Web, aren't you, Rock?
That's correct, Ken. Thank you very much. My column is called The Bottom Line.
We're going to talk about two topics on today's edition. The first one, the meaty one we're going to talk about, when is it time to sell your printing business? That's a question a lot of people ask us. And then later, we're going to talk about one of our listener questions submitted from you. This one, this is a good one. It's all about how do you talk to the bank about getting a line of credit? So that one is coming up, so stay tuned for that. But first, let's dive into this whole issue about when is it time to sell? So, Rock, when people ask you this question, what do you usually tell them?
That is asked of me constantly. Time to sell. Rock, when is it time to sell? It depends. It depends on the individual. It's not the marketplace. It's not me. It's you. It's you and your family. When you've decided when is the right time. So you have to prepare for it, just like anything else. Buying or selling, timing, it's critical. It could be very strategic. That's the best way, is being strategic and plan it out. And one of the key issues is making sure that you could have the time to discern your decision, and you don't want to be rushed. You don't want to be in a situation where you have to sell. You want to be in a position where you can control the situation, control the sale. In the meantime, you're growing, you're focused, and you're disciplined.
And I guess if someone was looking to buy and they realize you're panicked and you don't know what to do, that's a red flag right away.
Big time. People know the situation. There's always rumors about organizations, whether they're for sale, if they're expanding, if they're moving, what are the reasons? What about family business? Who's the successor? What about their age? What about a baby boomer? When is it time to sell? From the outside looking in, a buyer is always looking at a strategic opportunity to invest and to win. It's a financial decision. However, they want to make sure that the integration of these companies, the combination of these companies, have the chemistry, the culture that is very important to combine these organizations, because it takes time. And the former owner also has to have a plan to retire. When is the right time? What if they're rushed to sell? We don't know those situations, but the best time to really look at the situation is to be in control of a systematic, strategic time to sell.
In terms of the sales process, Rock, what is the first thing that someone needs to do?
Okay, the first thing that a business owner, in this case, the label industry, business owners, the first thing you need to do is decide. Decide which way you want to go. In other words, if you really want to plan to expand your business or exit the business or enter into a diversified part of the label industry, you need to plan. You need to plan, and the first thing you need to do is understand your financial situation. That's the only way you're going to understand which way you're going to go. I call them the 3 E's. Either enter, expand, or exit. Once you know your financial situation, you know where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are, and if you have the opportunity to do either one of those strategies.
And I'm guessing that when people haven't done that homework, they haven't done the research, they're probably going to overestimate the value of their business.
Many, many do. But let's go back to once you decide and you have a valuation, and I highly recommend an objective valuation, not your own personal valuation as a owner, or not a friend, or not even your CPA, because we're really looking for someone that's objective, that understands the industry, that understands the market, and could basically tell you where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are, and then decide which way you want to go. But in this case that we're talking about today are sellers. People that are looking to sell their business to exit. So once you know your financial situation, you have your valuation, you could decide if you're going to organize your business and organize your facility and restructure your business, because it's going to take time, whether it's a year, 2 years. I've seen people look at an exit strategy for 3 years before they decided, you know what, I'm going to sell my business. But during that time, strategically, you could position yourself to financially benefit and create wealth.
I understand there's also an important step. It sounds kind of obvious, but it's almost like selling your house, where you want to make sure your house looks good to sell. In this case, you're doing stuff to make sure that your business looks as good as possible to the outside world.
It's all part of the process of, number one, planning and preparing. So for an example, besides the quantitative numbers, we look at and assess a walkthrough. Not only do I understand the financial situations, I start getting deep into the background of the organization, the family, its objectives, its goals. Many times I get to know the family to the point where they start talking about their expectations of an estate plan or the successes of their children. Walk through the plant. It gives me a lot of ideas of how organized they are just through housekeeping, cleanliness, the facility layout, the lean operations, its infrastructure. How much have they invested in efficiencies, in people, in training? We also look at the inventory, big time. Many times you have excess inventory or old inventory. That's all part of the valuation process. Don't be disappointed when you find out that 60 or 70% of your inventory is over 20 years old and you're going to dump it. It's surplus. Okay? How about equipment? We all know about the equipment, how long it lasts. Has it been upgraded? Look at today's digital equipment. Look at the flexo equipment. Look at the slitting requirements and the sheeting and the rewinding equipment. There's a lot happening in the industry. A buyer is going to look at everything. Your value needs to be built all the way through. Not only the financials, but it's the infrastructure, it's operations, it's people, it's who's going to handle the business when you're no longer there if you decide to sell and not hold on. What about your transition period? Is it 6 months? Is it a year? What if you have health issues? What if you don't have a year to really decide which way you're going to go? It's very, very important to have a successor, whether in the business or outside the business, that you can trust and is going to deliver on your wishes and your legacy, just in case something does happen in the transition of the sale of your business, which I have seen.
And I guess at this point, too, we should make sure people understand who are looking to sell their printing businesses. When they're working with a broker like you or even someone else, there is confidentiality in the process.
Very much so. An NDA, non-disclosure, non-circumvent, is standard in our industry with licensed brokers such as myself. And so that is usually the first step, is signing an agreement that confidentiality is within the parties that are going to be spoken to. And if we start looking at marketing the business, that's all standard in the industry of having all interested parties sign in an NDA, which is strictly enforced.
We touched upon it just a little bit earlier, but it is important for someone to really normalize the inventory that they have, because that can be like a hole in a boat if you're not paying attention to it.
Very much so. People underestimate the power of the inventory, of the valuation of the business, and projected future materials, cost of materials, utilization of materials, and so on. And so pricing is very critical. Not only your ongoing jobs while you're in the process of selling your business, but basically the gross margins, your net income. I mean, when it comes down to inventory, it's very, very important to understand and document what you paid for it, what it's worth, having a markup on it, and so on, because most people underestimate raw materials and the cost of raw materials in the industry.
Rock, I understand that the final phase of this, getting your mind into the sales process, is something that most people never think about.
Most of my clients are baby boomers. Never really think about the post-close of a sale of a company. What am I going to do? There's always a want or a need to sell. The seller or potential seller, the question is asked of them from a bigger player, a larger buyer that's very astute, looking at mergers and acquisitions strategies. They will approach a potential seller due to competition, due to market share, due to age. We all know that someday we're going to retire. Someday we're going to die. So are we prepared for that transition? So when I see the people in their 50s and their 60s really thinking about the situation, the big question is what am I going to do with my life? What am I going to reinvest in another business? Am I going to go golfing? Am I going to move to Florida? These questions are always asked, and it just seems like it takes a lot of emotion, the thought of what am I going to do as an individual versus looking at the overall fact that it will all come to an end someday. So the key is think about when that day comes. And we have examples, these star athletes for an example. And I go back to Mike Strahan of the New York Giants. He didn't know that they were going to win the Super Bowl that particular year, but he had already had a strategy, he had a plan, and he also knew that no matter what happened, he was going to retire and go into another career. We all have the opportunity to go into another career. Initially, when a buyer or seller comes to me, what is the plan? And those are the people that are much more disciplined and strategic on how to position themselves for this time of 6 months to a year. Some of my clients I have spent 2 to 3 years with, just working on either them emotionally positioning themselves, because a lot of times financially you see the numbers. You see how well a company is performing just by looking at the income statements and the balance sheets. But the key is, Rock, what is my business worth today? Last year, for an example, in 2015, that business may be worth more in 2015 than 2016. Why? Because the market is changing. The demand is changing. The strategy is changing for these end users. It could greatly affect you as a business owner if you don't compete in the industry. So times have changed dramatically. So hopefully that helps to focus on not only the game plan to retire or to exit, but also to think about what you're going to do after the close of the business.
And you would recommend to people, even if they have no plans to sell, they might want to mentally go through this process now in case that offer appears unexpectedly at their doorstep one day.
It will happen. The day will come. It will happen. Start thinking now, no matter if you're 58 or 78.
Very good. Good advice for people as they prepare for that next step in their business. Coming up, we will have the answer to our listener question, which is all about how you get a line of credit from the bank. But first, we want to show some sponsorship, love, and appreciation for our sponsor, Label and Narrow Web. Did you know that Label and Narrow Web put out a printed magazine as well as an electronic newsletter full of all sorts of resources to help you in the printing world? And of course, as we mentioned earlier, in the magazine, you can see the column from Mr. Rock LaManna, the bottom line. Tremendous resources right there, labelandnarrowweb.com. Want to remind you, the "and" is spelled out in Label and Narrow Web, so feel free, head over there, check it out. And of course, all these notes will be in the show notes for this episode. So, Rock, are you ready to get to our question of the month? We encourage people to send in their questions, and as always, we understand there's certain confidentiality in the business world, so if someone wants their name to be changed, we will do that. So for this month, we will say, in honor of the new Star Wars film that came out, that this question is from Han Solo. So Mr. Solo asks, I'm looking to grow my business in the future. I know I'm going to need to go to the bank to see if I can get a line of credit. How do I go about this process? Rock, what would you tell Han Solo?
First of all, hopefully you've been in business for some time and you have a very good relationship with the bank that you're working with. They know who you are. The banking relationship representative hopefully understands your business where you sat down with them. It's always good to know the performance of the company, of course, because they're going to ask you questions, not only your credibility, not only about the capital that you're looking for. They're going to ask you, what are you going to use it for? Okay? And of course, it's very difficult for them to look at approving a bank loan if it's not used for growth, for some type of reason for growth. So you need to show them that you're not only committed, you should always have a mini business plan or a strategic plan of what you're going to use that money for. So it's very important to look at the commitment of yourself, the credibility of yourself, the collateral they're going to be looking at, and the reason for the capital, and the reason why you need it now to be able to look at your future.
Makes sense. Good advice. So feel free to submit your listener question to us. And Rock, I understand the best way to do that is to shoot that email out to you. Where can they do that?
RockLaManna.com. You could also subscribe to my blog and my newsletter, monthly newsletter. I have Rock's Gems that are more or less every month. We give you an idea of what's available for sale and what sellers are trying to do, what buyers are looking to acquire. I also have, of course, the bottom line, hard copy and the online copy. Looking forward to your questions. I'm looking forward to meeting you in the marketplace.
And if you want to reach me, tvguy@kenokel.com. The website is kenokel.com. And again, all of this information we will include in our show notes so it's easy for you to access. So, Rock, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you again, Ken.
And we will see you in the marketplace.
This is The Prince's Edge with Rock LaManna. Thanks for listening.